President-elect Donald Trump will be sworn in as president in just about 5 weeks. And according to a new CBS poll, 59% of those surveyed think that Mr. Trump's business relationships will create a conflict of interest upon being sworn in. 34% of registered voters, in fact, believe, meanwhile, that Mr. Trump will be a good president, as you see here, though 36% seem to directly disagree with those 34%. To break down these numbers and perhaps divine what they tell us, our elections director, Anthony Salvanto, good enough to join us. And so we see those numbers. Let's start with the ideas about the conflicts of interest. 70% of those polled, in fact, believe that if he hands the company over to his adult sons, there will still be conflicts of interest. And so I guess my question is, as we've seen post-election, does it matter?
Well, look, this will be a results-oriented determination on the part of the American people. Remember, people who voted for Donald Trump voted for change, and they voted for a businessman who they believed could not only change things, but bring them back jobs. And I suspect the thing to watch in the polls as we go forward is if people feel like they're getting jobs, everything works. And if they don't feel like they're getting jobs, nothing does. And everything else is sort of tangential.
34% think he's going to do a good job. That within 4 or 5 points, that was sort of his base. That's been his support there. It was believed throughout for 18 months now. But that is well below the numbers we saw as his predecessors on both sides of the aisle were taking office. What to make of that number?
Well, I think first you want to put that in context. This was obviously a really divisive election, so it looks a little bit more like 2000, where coming out of that really divided election, you didn't have as many people from the other party who were willing to be optimistic or say they thought that he would do a good job. I mean, if folks were looking for America's sort of collective group hug here, let's put it all behind us, that ain't happening just yet, right? What we've got is Democrats who overwhelmingly think they're not optimistic, they don't think he'll be a good president, and Republicans who say that they are and that he will be. So that's the underlying numbers behind those numbers. That's why they're so low, because Democrats overwhelmingly say no, they don't think he'll be a good president.
And I wonder about your personal feeling here, because in a way, there's a meta sense that polling has become a grist for the mill here, because I can read the tweet, perhaps not yet crafted. That's, the poll said I was going to lose.
Yeah. Look, first of all, there's no likely voters in this poll. This is all Americans. There's no changing of minds or undecided voters. So in that sense, everyone should know it's very different from a pre-election poll. But look, what you want to do now, as you wanted to do, frankly, before the election, is dig in a little bit and see that there are, in fact, these divisions. That was what was underpinning the pre-election, and that's still what's underpinning them now.
So is that also how to explain the numbers we see, the approval numbers of his cabinet picks thus far, also markedly far below that of Presidents Obama and Bush?
Yes. So you've got that split, but then you've also got, frankly, a lot more attention to them. In the past two administrations, one could argue that the people chosen had been in government or had been in, circles of government, and they were sort of familiar to people. This is change. I mean, these folks are different coming in. So for Donald Trump's voters who voted for that business acumen, that's different, but it's also getting a lot more attention. And anything these days that gets a lot of attention then gets a lot of division.
When you see numbers anywhere above 60% in polls such as these, they make me take note. 60% would like to see the tax returns. However, if that number was 99%,
right,
what change is affected?
Again, it's going to be results oriented. If he doesn't release his tax returns and the people who voted for him feel like the economy's getting better, and you already start to see some of that optimism, then whatever works.
No tax returns becomes a business as usual.
It's business as usual. Here's another aspect of change, right? So people can say, well, that's change, that's different. Okay, we voted for that. We voted for that kind of change. So again, if it all comes out at the end. If you're getting, the voter, if you're getting what you wanted, make it work.
Get you out of here in this one then. 60% also believe that President-elect Donald Trump is tweeting too much.
And that's one place, excuse me, where you see a little bit more agreement between Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
There's a sizable 4 in 10 of Republicans who say it's too much as well. Look, he says it's a new form of communication. Obviously, it was effective for him in the campaign.
Ari Fleischer pointed out. Ari Fleischer said, I wonder if people ever asked FDR if he was going to continue to use the radio. But now the philosophical split here is the idea of the technology existing and being effective, and whether or not a president-elect should be doing it.
Well, let's again put it in this context of what works, right?
Yep.
Now, everything a president says affects policy, can move markets, can affect diplomacy,
We've seen it
etc.
already happen. We've seen it with Boeing. We've seen it with Lockheed Martin.
Exactly. So now when folks see, okay, here's a tweet and it's doing something, now they'll judge it. And now they'll say, okay, either it's affecting things my way or a good way and it's okay, or it's not affecting things or it's affecting things detrimentally, and now, hey, maybe it's too much. But that test is still sort of sitting out there.
There's clearly a belief, though, by the president-elect that this is a medium where he can influence, where a medium that was very vital, I'm sure, to his victory. Interestingly, though, apparently not a company important enough to have its CEO sitting at a technology summit held yesterday at Trump Tower. Lots to parse. I wonder how people feel about that. Anthony Salvanto, we do appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.